Mics are up. And a good morning to you, Lagos. You are tuned in and listening to Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1. It's Friday, the 1st of June. Welcome inside of Freshly Pressed. This is our segment with detailed newspaper analysis. Valentine and myself are here this morning to guide you through it. Also joining us in the studio, we have fantastic Friday analyst, Miss Ireti Bakare-Yusuf is in the building. Good morning, Miss Ireti.
She's in the building.
Yes.
Hello. Happy June.
Yes. Happy New Month.
Stop it. We've also got Nwaji in the studio. Good morning, Nwaji. How are you doing?
Good morning, Folu, and good morning, Lagos.
There you go. Now you can find them both online on social media. I know the Nwaji fans are out there, like his voice is back. Where can we go over to Twitter? Just search for the corporate MC. That's corporate with a K. You'll find him up there. Miss Ireti, as usual, is Sisi Oge Lagos, the one and only on Twitter, on Instagram, worldwide. She deserves smackole. Okay, let's jump into the newspaper analysis for this morning. I'm going to Nwaji for the first story, but don't forget we are also streaming on YouTube, so you can drop your live comments there and leave the hashtag and use the hashtag on Twitter, freshlypress981, or send us messages to our WhatsApp number, which is 0809 444 0981. So, drop your presidential ambition for now, Buhari begs the youth. This is talking about 2019, and this is from the Vanguard newspaper. Now, he has officially signed in the Not Too Young to Run bill into law. That happened at the council chamber, the presidential villa in Abuja. He also told the youth to stop campaigning for the forthcoming elections and keep their presidential ambition till 2023. Nwaji, I don't know, it sounds like sane advice, because as soon as I heard this was signed, I sort of already was calculating for what year I need to be running for, because no time for this next 2019. But what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts?
Okay, first of all, I think the headline of the article is a little bit misleading.
Deliberately so. So, Vanguard.
Because there's a need to be careful with that. Because he was quite, he gave a lot of platitudes towards the youth of Nigeria and commended them for the amount of things that they've done in commerce, in business, and just the general sphere of things and everything else. And I think the way that that comment was made regarding them dropping their presidential aspirations was more or less tongue-in-cheek, that kind of thing, that in as much as we are dropping this bill to lower the age requirements for you to run for certain offices with the presidency and have state assemblies and things of that nature, with the exception of senators, is one of those things of, oh, but don't run against me kind of thing. So I think it was tongue-in-cheek with that particular aspect. But I think it brings light to a larger conversation regarding the youth of Nigeria and what that actually means.
All right.
Just take a quick second to quote Nelson, the late great Nelson Mandela, who always made a comment about this world or this life that we live in is not necessarily something that we inherited from our ancestors, but something that we are borrowing from our children. So we always have to encourage the youth of tomorrow to be the forefront of politics, of technology, of commerce, of business.
Okay.
Taiwo, on your earlier segment, talked about the BBC, which is known as a traditional institution, having a huge youth injection with regards to creativity, etc., etc.
Especially at the moment.
Bringing in a lot of energy with their virtual realities.
Sorry, the BBC actually has a lot of dragons. Maybe in Nigeria, just taking a whole load of
I understand that, but I'm giving specific
and let's not use because that's because
that.
he's not familiar with the BBC. Those of us who are, it's full of dragons.
Right.
So that's not a good example.
But bottom line, this is very welcome. Nigerians, please take to the polls, take to register, take to organizing, take to mobilizing, get your candidacies right, and please let us now ensure we do indeed move into the digital age, because that is not what's required, especially in leadership for the country.
You know, the question I want to ask you, YJ, though, is I think we still need to identify what age is youth in Nigeria, because, you know, your 70-year-old uncle is
so it's clear here.
In terms of the being eligible to run, eligible aspirants now for members of the State House of Assembly were reduced from 30 to 25, all right? So now at 25, you can run for State Houses of Assembly, and eligible aspirants for members of the Federal House of Representatives also reduced 30 to 25. Aspirants for presidents have been lowered from 40 to 35.
The only one that wasn't affected was the senators.
So very quickly, Folu,
legislators.
Nwaji, very quickly. So now we've said 25 is the lowest age. Have we done anything to back that up, like i.e., e.g., hashtag education? Because a 25-year-old that has come out of the Nigerian education system, as we are today, is not likely to be able to
Okay, so
rule
then-
even their house, let alone
Wait, hold on,
the
hold on.
community.
There are two ways to look at that, Ms. Ireti, and I know we're spending a
This
lot of time
table you
on
are
this.
shaking.
It is
There
shaking.
are two ways to look at that. It's one thing for there to be the encouragement of the environment as to whether or not they're ready, but and once again, you have to remember this is not for everybody. Are there 25-year-olds that happen to meet those criteria in terms of education, in terms of know-how, in terms of political mobilization? I absolutely believe so. They just need to be given the opportunity. So I wouldn't necessarily cast a wide net on everybody within that age group not having the capacity. I think it's a question of build it and they will come. Lower the age restrictions, and then you now allow the individuals that will rise to the top like that fine cream that you put in your wonderful tea every single morning
prove themselves.
to not prove
They gonna
themselves.
shine like they gonna shine.
No,
Shine like
but
they
we
gonna
do
shine.
have to move
We
on
have
for
to
time
move on.
reasons. Yes, Miss Ireti, since we are speaking with you already from the Vanguard newspaper, still feeding program, parents of Ondo pupils decrying the stoppage of free meals. So that's of the public school students in Ondo State. The parents have decried the stoppage of the daily feeding by the government under the National Homegrown School Feeding Program. Now, the stoppage of the free meal is coming a few weeks after the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, visited the state, ate with the students of the public school, took pictures, we know, it was very nice. And it was gathered that the cooks engaged for the services just stopped bringing food to the school following a huge debt incurred by the government.
Yeah, so this is so you'll all remember that when APC came in, they said they were going to start a school feeding program in actually to encourage children to stay in school, and so parents can't then use it as an excuse not to send their children. And we did talk about it on this show how nutrition is very critical, you know, to learning beyond exactly. So you've got to have the right food, etc., etc. That was all great and everything, and this is often what happens. We have to ask ourselves, in this case, is the problem from the top or is the problem from the bottom, so to speak? So the federal government have gone ahead and started implementing. However, the local government is not paying the caterers.
Counterpart, yeah.
Yes. They're not paying the caterers who are supposed to make the school, who are supposed to make the meals for the school. And this has been going on for quite some time, and it's totally disgusting. But it leads people to make statements such as, I'm quoting one of the representatives for the parents, says, it's a total failure in Ondo State. The program is a total failure in Ondo State. And that is an indictment on Ondo State. The state government gave out 4.2 million in 2018 budget, or rather they earmarked 4.8 billion in the 2018 budget for this program. And this is where I wonder who kicks these governors of the backside, because when the representative of Ondo State is asked to speak, Commissioner for Information, Mr. Yemi Olowolabi, no, not the right name. He said, this is his quote. He said, all the accounts would be harmonized by next week, and payment would be made to ensure the success of the scheme. What does that mean? And the thing is, nobody's ever actually questioned, because allow me to say, this is also symbolic of who we are as a people. In Nigeria, we don't like to question.
Just background information for our listeners as well. Just note that it has failed for the last 2 weeks. So for the last 2 weeks, they have not been fed. The cooks are very upset. They're saying, "Listen,
was it working?
No. Well, again, according to the article, yes.
Okay.
So they haven't been fed for the last 2 weeks, which is what I'm just clarifying.
Yeah, because the caterers went on strike.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
But it was going on before.
So it's a procurement issue.
Well, it's not even so much. It's a payment issue as usual. It's not so much even procurement, because and what they had, even in your state, let me tell you very quickly, what they had is they had a lovely chain, an ecosystem where you had to get from the local farmer in order to be able to be a caterer, to be able to get allocation from these funds.
Importing.
So exactly. So you get from the local farmer, local caterer, straight to the local kids. What more do you want? But for some reason, we're not able to do this. And I keep saying, in Nigeria, we don't like being questioned. We don't like being questioned because somebody needs to ask some critical questions. How could this go so wrong?
MI from Akoka sent a message on WhatsApp. It says, happy Nigerian people. So we now have a legit hashtag, not too young to run. I guess they finally figured out we're not lazy Nigerian youth. They put that in the hashtag. The semantics aside, this is a good first step, but we need to start the next wave of advocacy, which is the pragmatic process of making this a reality. Else, it'll be a beautiful piece of legal document. Nwaji fan here. Chai. MI from Akoka, thank you very much for saying this one. Akimbode Temitope said, not too young to run law is beautiful, but the major challenge is the process to run. How many youth can afford the application form or the fee? Really, what about the insecurity and so forth? things that we need to.
Should be you people
hurdles we
want
need
to
cross,
run.
right?
It's not for
Now
everybody.
you're
I don't
complaining.
It's
know.
not
They
for
have opened it
everybody.
now.
You now we want to run, and now
Yes.
you're saying you can't run.
Well,
Jolo, fine, they
not
say.
everybody can run.
She talking.
Obi from
Hey.
Surulere, hang on. Obi from Surulere says the bill is for their children. Just wait and see. Ike Wachuku says they need to amend their constitution first of all before the not too young to run bill can be useful. Waji, you have a message from Awele. Says your response to the not too young to run bill was just epic. Allow the youth come into the political process in terms of leadership. Yes, our educational system is in shambles, but there are 25, 26, and 30-year-olds who can take up the mantle.
I agree.
Oh,
I know they are.
We agree with you. Tosin Daniel says, my only challenge is in our culture does not give 18-year-olds a maturity influence. Most 18-year-olds know nothing about life in Nigeria.
Well,
And
no,
at-
they
and
don't.
at
Neither
30
do most 25-year-olds.
At-
I put it to you.
at
How
30
many of you have paid bills at the age of 25?
30, most still live with their parents. When we
Yes.
talk to most youths, they're
Thank
generally
you.
intellectually inept. That's my
Thank you. Who
challenge.
said that?
Wow.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Wow.
I'm gonna say,
Wow.
I'm
No.
gonna say,
totally-
I need 10
I had
seconds for
to-
you. I need 10 seconds.
Okay, please, very quickly.
Political aspirations is literally not for everybody.
No, it's not.
So if you now begin to look at the entirety of the youth and cast those aspersions, then nobody will run. But guess what? In every generation, you will have the finest of the finest who take up the mantle of leadership to be able to move their people forward. It is a known fact throughout the history of human occupation and human politics.
I need
It
to
is
give
an
him 5 seconds
undisputed
to
fact.
respond to that.
Mr.
No,
Mr.
this
Riti,
is
we
unfair.
do-
This
we
is
do-
unfair.
we do- Mr. Riti,
Because
you
this is
chipped into
unfair.
history.
No,
No,
but
it's
he's
not
yeah,
unfair.
but it was in my story.
It's
This is
not.
unfair. 5
It's
seconds
not.
for you. 5 seconds, and this is important. No, we have to do what's important. This is important. What I would say to that is, where you have an education system where the majority of your 25-year-old has not been properly trained, properly equipped, then you can't start celebrating the minority.
Okay, so
It
we
is a
have to
fool's
move on now.
paradise.
That's more than 10 seconds. Thank you very much, Mr. Ireti. And we are still staying with you for the next story. So I'm counting your seconds for this next story, Mr. Ireti. I don't care if you think it's unfair.
Yeah.
We've got this in from the Guardian newspaper. And I have things to say considering that I'm the youthest youth in this room. So I personally take offense at a lot of things being said out there for that
I'm gonna throw
time.
me some shade.
Anyway,
right now.
For you who wasn't educated
us
in
continue.
Nigeria.
Excuse me, my primary and a lot of my secondary was here, but let's carry on. From the Guardian newspaper next, the court has remanded ex-governor Yero and 3 others into prison custody. Mr. Ireti, what's your take on the story very quickly?
Right. So, well, it's good. I mean, that's the first thing I will say. So, former, actually, let's say, legislators or political servants.
Yes, so former governor of Kaduna
Yeah,
State,
so,
Yero.
sorry, I was still lost in that education discussion. Right, so they've been sent to, they've basically been remanded in jail. Why? Because they took part in, there's so many figures.
Criminal
23 billion,
conspiracy.
yeah, 23 billion, 290 million, there was one that said 705,000 naira. I'm not sure if they were supposed to write that, but that's what it said, 705,000 naira.
I like it. That's money still.
Exactly, 150 million USD. And what they did was bribery, money laundering, criminal diversion of funds to the tune of all those amounts. And it was all to do with Madame Desani Alison Madueke. And the unfortunate thing is, so this money was sent out and spread around. However, these 4 not so smart musketeers actually acknowledged receipt. They acknowledged that they received it and that they would give it out to 23 local governments and local councils for INEC staff that are working there, which is totally disgraceful. This was all to do with the election back in those 2 years ago. So yeah, so this is good news. The fact that they've been remanded is good news and everything. But the unfortunate things, again, we talk about the youth. I've just got to bring a quote here. In this story, tears also rolled down the cheeks of the family and supporters who were in the premises. Some of the youths went on rampage, blocked the highway, and damaged the traffic warden cubicle because of these people. Yero, who has just been remanded in prison for stealing some of your Commonwealth. Yet the same youth that we want them to rule this country went on a rampage. I didn't make that story
Again,
up.
no, but I am going to point out that we do live in an ageist society where newspapers continuously generalize and blame youth for every single
They
thing that
didn't.
happens.
This was a story live. They were at the
Yes,
court.
and I'm
for
saying that it is a
Same-
general
same kind of
statement and it's a
report.
general kind of reporting that we get.
I
But
get
let's
it. So
move
we
on.
need to agree what
But
the
let's
youth
move
is.
on. But
No,
let's
you're
move
right.
on. Let's move on. We've got more still in from this day newspaper. Army intercepts 300,000 live cartridges smuggled into Nigeria from Benin Republic. That's from this day newspaper. So the 35 Artillery Brigade of 81 Division Nigerian Army on Thursday intercepted 300,000 live cartridges that have been smuggled into the country through Benin Republic border. Now, the cartridges, which were packed into small cartons, were concealed in false bottoms of 3 heavy-duty trucks, which passed several checkpoints before they were intercepted at a particular area in Ogun State. Nwaji, your thoughts?
I always get very worried in the pre-election year when you start hearing stories of gun runners and stories of lords of war moving weapons, because it just speaks only to one thing, which is people trying to stockpile to get ready for quote-unquote another election. It will make it seem like they're trying to get ready for a revolution, but it's just more or less people just trying to arm themselves to get ready for the ensuing violence that will happen during the election. So these things always worry me, and then you now couple that with also the exchange of cash that's happening with the surplus and peripherous manner in which you're having money circulate within the economy. We need to put a stop to this. I think our intelligence services are doing the right thing. What I really liked about this article was the indication that they got tips from Nigerians that there was something suspicious about these vehicles being moved, and they were the ones out to the authorities to make moves on it. So if more Nigerians are able to speak up on these kind of very suspicious activities, then the security apparatus have the intelligence and have the information to move and mobilize, which could eventually protect the lives of Nigerian citizens. So we all need to collectively come together. We are a community. We have to help each other to ensure that we protect ourselves. If you see something, say something. And this is a case of point of what happened.
Yeah.
All right. We do have a few messages that have come in. Oh, Valentine, you just took away the one message. There you go. All right. I was like, why did you take this? Onache sends in this message, and I'm going to read this because I happen to agree. She says, Mr. Ireti, speaking for the youth that she knows, some of us were born prepared, been paying bills since 20, says Onache. All right. Still more coming in.
I'm not going to speak.
Please don't. You can't.
You can't let me. You're kicking me under the table.
Yes, I am. That's what I'm doing. Tunde says, we should rather be promoting for voting capacity instead of all this youth stuff. Youth are
Thank
worse.
you.
In many cases, highly ostentatious and ambitious to the negative. The youth are the ones used to rig elections, snatch ballot boxes, and cause electoral violence. Go to various student union governments across Nigerian institutions and see how the youth in charge of affairs do nothing but loot the treasury of these associations.
That's the boy I want to
Saminu
adopt.
Turaki, Asalisu Yusuf, Yahaya Bello, Dino, Dimeji Bankole were all youth when they assumed leadership positions. For the fact, 6 a.m. 8 youth. That's interesting today, but also bear in mind
that's very true. Forget saying it's interesting.
Yes, it
just
is.
Because you can't use your life as a
Miss
sample.
Ireti, thank you. You can't shout over me. I will not allow it. But what is also true is that the state that we're in and the elders that have run us into this place were also, I'm just pointing that out because it's not.
No, because you're not listening to what the young man was saying. You didn't hear it.
Mr. Ireti, I did, and I read it out. Thank you. And we've got IK who says, Mr. Ireti, people went on rampage because they don't believe justice is being served. Convince them that APC funded its elections with funds from the churches and mosques, and they were all aligned. All right. We do have to move on.
We'll move on now, Mr. Ireti. I'll let you speak now. So from Premium Times, we have the story. It says CBN Deputy Governor resigns. Now, the second resignation in 2 days that we're seeing. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN Deputy Governor in charge of operations, Adebayo Adelabu, will resign his appointment effective July 15th of July 2018. He had his disengagement notice sent into the president, who approved it. President Muhammad Buhari indicated interest, approved his interest really, that indicated to run for governorship in his home state of Oyo. We'll recall that he served at different times as deputy governor in charge of financial system stability first, and then corporate services, before his last position as deputy governor in charge of operations.
There's not really a lot to take. He's resigning his current job. There isn't really. He's resigning his current job and he's going to go and run for governor in his state. And he is the grandchild, or he's one of the grandchild of the Oyo political leader, late Adegoke Adelabu. So
he's Adelabu's
yes, he's Adelabu. Yeah, so there you go. So I guess it's there's not really a lot to say.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
We wish him luck.
Really, once in a lifetime brief analysis.
But there's nothing in that story.
Okay, so let's move on to this next one now. Guardian has this story. Representatives begin probe of $22 billion Brass LNG project. Nwaji, I'll come to you with this one. The House of Representatives has set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the expenditure and implementation of the $22 billion Brass liquefied natural gas project. It also resolved that the committee should report back to the House within 6 weeks of further legislative actions. What's your take on this?
Finally, you know, the legislators are now beginning to ask questions. This Brass project has been on for the better part, into my own memory, 13, 14 years. But this has been going on, and they have not gone greenfield in the sense that they have not connected any pipeline to any gas. It's been in the planning stages for this amount of time. And they look at the amount of money that they've spent mostly on operational cost, not necessarily on infrastructure operational, which has to go with salaries and running costs or whatever the case may be, permits, licenses to get up and running. So when you look at that finite figure of 22 billion, it does warrant a probe to at the least let people know where that money has been spent and why we have not seen the fruits of that particular amount of investment. So I think it's a very, very vital thing that the legislators and reps are doing to begin to inquire as to how that money has been spent, and so let there be some transparency, so let people understand what is going on. When you begin to look at the joint venture partnerships that have pulled out over the years with the likes of Conoco, Phillips, etc., you now begin to wonder, okay, why were these guys initially invested as joint venture partners with NNPC, and they eventually pulled out? It's a bit worrisome. So I think in addition to that probe, they need to go speak to those earlier joint venture partners and find out why were they initially invested and why they left. I mean, the reasons being is that it's an unstable economy, it's hard to do business, etc. But there has to be other reasons as well, because you have other joint venture partnerships in Nigeria where they stay through. So I think I welcome it. I think the probe is important. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's know where that money is, and let us know how it goes down.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Messages are coming in. Do keep them coming in. Use the hashtag freshlypressed981. We've got up on Twitter on that hashtag Kolawole Adekoya, who says, all right, he's talking about traffic. Yes, we will put that out eventually. Toski Duke says, not too young to run bill for Nigerian youth. That's okay. Hashtag Godfatherism. Very interesting. While from WhatsApp, we've got more still coming in. Matilda from Ikoyi says, some of us are born ready, and yes, we have a lot of under 25 paying bills. I started working at 19, got my first brand new car at 21, got my mum a car at 24. I schooled in Nigeria. Hashtag not too young to run. We've got this in from Kenny Atuge, who says an average 35-year-old is still trying to find his bearings in Nigeria.
Thank you.
And these people still banned 25-year-olds from running. So what were they afraid of? We need the hashtag just too old to run bill more. And GB says, Nwaji on point, even amongst the blind, someone must lead. Miss Ireti, this generation will lead this nation eventually.
Amen.
And my point here is just that there is a diamond in the rough amongst them. We need to find and encourage him or her.
And let the church say amen.
This day's next.
That's where
Bandits
we find it.
abduct many travelers on Birnin Gwari-Funtua road. Now, an unspecified number of people reportedly kidnapped yesterday along the Benin Gwari-Funtua road in Kaduna State. They said this is not the first time it's happening there. This particular incident was said to have occurred at 3:45 p.m. yesterday between Kioyi and Maganda villages in Benin Gwari local government area of Kaduna State. And then 5 vehicles were stopped. The bandits took out all the passengers from the cars and moved them into the bush. One of the drivers of the cars managed to escape. What's your take on this story?
This is absolutely horrible. When you now begin to look at it, my heart goes out to the families of the total of 69 individuals who have been abducted over this period. I actually feel for NURTW because they have been clamoring for safety on the road for a very long time. I do have issues with them with regards to how they operate and the kind of silliness they get involved in. But with regards to safety on the roads, they have been on this matter for years. And these are the things that actually happen, and they are speaking to that they get wind of. Even their people have been kidnapped and sometimes, loss of life with regards to just these bandits that operate in these very interesting hidden dark zones of Nigeria where the next security post, the closest individual with a weapon that can handle these situations is hundreds of miles away. So there needs to be better responses, there needs to be better monitoring of these highways so that people can continue on with their life. The statements made in this article with regards that people can go to the market, people can move back and forth. It slows down commerce and it has a knock-on effect on just general standards of living. So the security agencies have a lot of work to do in these regions to make sure they begin to nip it in the bud, or at the least have some presence on these highways to deter people from being kidnapped. That's just the most important thing that needs to happen. So it's a sad situation, and I really hope that they get to the bottom of it.
Thank you very much, Wadi.
Thank you. We've got messages coming in on our live chat. Chuksameka says, although it is true that most 25-year-olds are not mature enough to hold leadership positions, there are still a number that are responsible enough to do, and the opportunity should be made available for them to run. Abiodun Fatai says, all the running for presidents, where are we running to? Go to airports, and you will see youth running away from this country.
Right.
You see all these quote-unquote good
points.
things happening is for hashtag election movie. It will be a film, I will be honest with you. More still coming in. Hey, messages are flooding in this morning.
That's me.
Torski says, really, we can't generalize. While you may say that the average youth cannot handle themselves, we all know that whoever will lead will not be average. So I'm at a loss that we even bring up the argument about average youth. Whichever youth will lead will definitely not be average.
How old was Buhari when he was president the first time?
How old was everybody?
I'm not even going to go down that road.
If Miss Ireti speaks now, Folu will be
don't have
partial
time,
and
please.
turn off
The
my
next
mic.
story is from the
Because I
Punch.
could answer that question for you and why.
Punch has this headline: PIGB suffers setback as National Assembly reworks the bill. Mr. Ireti Bakare-Yusuf, I'll come to you. This one. The Petroleum Industry Governance Bill has suffered a setback in 2 months after it was passed by the National Assembly. It was passed first the 10th of April 2018. Actually, the first one was was on the 5th of the month, and that was the Climate Change Bill 2008. And then the second one, the Petroleum Industry and Governance Bill, was 2018 rather, was passed on the 10th of April respectively. They said they could find ways to refer this to the respective conference committees, Conference Committee on Climate Change, and then Conference Committee on Petroleum Industry and Governance respectively, to rework them, to look at them, because they raised observations about that the Directorate of Legal Services said picked holes in it, that it didn't really tally and didn't really sit well with them, and they should report back within 1 week.
Yeah, they're going to report back in 1 week. But let's just remind the whole country what the PIGB is about, because it's been going on for so long. You can forget what it is. So the PIGB is the harmonized version of the bill. It seeks to unbundle the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation and merge its subsidiaries such as Department of Petroleum Resources and the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency into one entity. Right. So this has been going on for so long. However, they get to the point where the bill was passed and it was supposed to be sent for assent by
the president.
yes, for the president, and on the 5th and 10th of April this year. And then typically what happens, they're like, oops, screech brakes, we can't go further, because why? We've just discovered there are, quote, fundamental issues. Nobody tells us what those fundamental issues are. They've sent this bill back. Now we're probably going to be starting again, which means more delays. And I just don't trust it. But hey, who am I to speak? This is only misery now. So Folu will turn off the mic.
Thank you very much for having me, Sean.
Still in a better position than Chopper, so that's all right. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. And so we've come to the end of this morning's show, more or less, actually. But we can actually now chat about the comments. There are quite a few coming through. And we've actually got 3 minutes still, so that's good. This one is in from Awele, who says, people do not generalize. I was at 25, I was paying my rent and bills. I was also quite smart and level-headed, if I say so myself. Do not put all youth in the same bucket. By the way, I'm a quote-unquote youth, who says Awele. We've got Rainmaker, who says, I support the hashtag not too young to run. Ms. Ireti, I agree, we do have millions of irresponsible youth, but have we checked the percentage against the 48 to 50-year-olds? We need to rejig the system, and this is a way to do so. But on the PIGB, Saraki's baby, it will be passed, sure. All right. Tosin Daniel says Nigeria is a circus. I think the EFCC, the Senate, reps just wake up to arraign some enemies on the pretense of corruption. It's unfortunate, but I quite agree with those who say Buhari's fight is selective. What is Amechi doing walking freely? We're living in denial and expecting a great future. I'm sorry, but until there's a structure, we are all screwed, says Tosin Daniels.
Can I please say something about this issue? Thank you. And you're not going to switch off the mic. Thank you. Right. So here's what I'm saying so that you can all hear me quickly. What I'm saying is we're not starting from the basics. We are not fixing our education system. That's not to say that nobody can or we don't have anybody that can. What I am saying to you is that unless we start from the basics of fixing our education system so that we continue to produce young, capable, efficient-minded, educated young men and women into the society, we are going to end up regurgitating the same people over and over again. So with immediate effect, we are responding as usual to an immediate solution. We are not responding to a future solution. And we start celebrating just because they give. And this is what happens with Nigerian youth. They give you a little bit of bread you start celebrating it like it's a loaf. It is not a loaf. You need to demand for better education. If you don't demand for better education, you will end up with the same rot.
And this bill,
it's that simple.
This bill is going to give us the voice to speak about these things.
Can I quickly respond?
Go ahead.
All right. So very good point, and I actually don't disagree with that point about making sure you equally put some systems and structures in place to make sure there's a healthy educational system. But you have to ask yourself, which do you now start with first? And it's a pipeline. So create the laws, right, that enable the youth to be able to run. Then on the second component, and it's not for the people today, it's actually for the future. So at least people who are 15, 16, 17 years old can now begin to have some aspirational context to look forward to. So you have to put that in context with regards to what you're saying and see how best both can align. It doesn't make any sense to ensure that you have a healthy education system if you can only be 40 when you run for a particular position.
No, it doesn't.
So they have to work together.
I agree
with you. So for me, they have to be hand in hand.
I agree.
Okay.
And people question, no, you get the likes, you get anybody here that has ever had to interview, and ask all the HR that has ever had to interview 25-year-olds. And I'm going for 25 I'm not saying 30. Okay. 25-year-olds. They decry how they can't even sit at interviews. So we really must stop glossing over the cracks that we have in this country. And I will keep saying the truth, whether it's popular or not.
I think that's absolutely fine. We have come to the end of the show. Just a comment though, so I just can't help myself. I don't think that the problem is age. I think the problem is the system, because the same interviews I had with 40-year-olds. I know, that's what I'm pointing out, because the same interviews I had with 40-year-olds that can't speak and can't express themselves.
We're saying the same thing.
There you go. All right.
You've got to fix the system
We
first.
are done this morning. Big shout out to everybody who sent us lots of messages. A huge apologies to everyone whose messages we could not read. There's no time. But coming up next at 8:15, you can send in messages then. It's time to talk sports inside the locker room, and it's with a twist. Stay with us.
The headlines.
I like the way you prevent them.